Hey everyone, Mako here. Last time I talked about killing floor, but what if I told you that you could murder the floor twice over? Well, it just so happens that you can, because we've got Killing Floor 2. And now it's time for me to talk about the sequel, and boy do we have some things to talk about. But before I start, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and a sub, and without further ado, let's get on with the video. Now, first things first, I'm going to assume that you've watched the video on Killing Floor 1, so if you have never played KF1 or KF2, or never watched my original video, here's a link to the video. Go watch it either before this one and come back, or after the video if you feel like it. So, Killing Floor 2. It can be a controversial game if you think about it. It was made by the same studio, Tripwire Interactive, and the team that was making it was also made bigger, increasing it from around 10 people working on KF1 to about 50 people working on KF2 at the end of its development cycle. Luckily, you can also tell that the game was made by a team of passionate devs who actually cared about the game. The game was more polished, there was more detail put to both the Zs and the maps, as well as the flow of the game, but to actually explain how many things changed or improved from KF1 to KF2, I will need to get to the nitty-gritty, so let's start with the Zs. Enemies have gotten an overall facelift, their models are now obviously more detailed, but the most important thing are the variations. For instance, clots now come in 4 different flavors. Cyst, Slasher, an Alpha Clot, and the Rider, each acting differently. Stalkers are basically the same, but then Crawlers now can come in a large variant called the Elite Crawlers, who explode into a gas cloud when killed. Then you have Gore Fasts, who can now become Gore Fiends, which are faster and more aggressive and have a very neat interaction. When you shoot them in the face, or at least very near to their head, they will actually cover their head with their blades while running up to you to prevent you from hitting a headshot. Now, these are the smaller Zs, but when it comes to the medium-sized ones, there weren't many changes. Bloats are still big chunky boys, Husks will still shoot fireballs but now can also turn on their flamethrowers when they're up close, and you can shoot their backpack to make them explode. Sirens still do the exact same thing. But there's been a new addition to the mix, EDARs, or Elite Defense and Assault Robots, which are basically these high-tech robots that come in and mostly shoot you. You have EDARs that shoot rockets at you, ones that shoot lasers, and the most annoying ones, the EDARs that run up to you and hold you in place via their weird arm. And then we have the biggest Zs. Scrakes didn't really change except for the fact that they've clearly gone to the gym, and Fleshbounds are very close to being the exact same enemy, but they also come in a smaller variant called the Quarter Pounds, or as we like to call them in Europe.
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the fuck a quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
All of these enemies have gotten a major facelift, but also the team made sure that their attack animations are smooth and flow into one another. With most of these Zs, you can clearly see that they are about to attack you, and that they are about to attack you without any weird snapping from one animation to another. The spawn of these enemies has also improved, and most of the time you can't see them randomly spawning around the map. Sometimes some of the smaller Zs even crawl out of the vents that you can find on the maps. But Z improvements is not the only thing that changed. You've probably seen from the background footage that there are also 2 major changes. The UI is more futuristic, more rounded, there's more iconography, but even with these changes, it looks very clean and deliberate, as if the narrative of the game moved on from a bunch of survivors from London trying to fight for their lives and round up some sort of a defense against this threat, to these dudes actually got really good at what they do and are a bunch of professionals now. The one change in that I don't really like is swapping the trader areas for the trader pod. While technically it makes sense that with these new missions that the players go to, they don't really have a trader spot, but instead there's some trader pod that's, I don't know, possibly dropped in the area from above to provide them with weaponry and ammo, but I just liked having an actual trader shop selling you guns. The other thing that you could have seen changed are the maps. I mean, they are really good. They've got climate and theme. The lighting in most of them is on the point. They look nice. Some of them look clean. Some of them look like you're literally living through the apocalypse, which you are. And sometimes you just land on a steampunk airship. It's amazing. Oh, and blood now stays permanently on the map. Whenever you kill a Zed, the blood that spills from shooting them, decapitating them, etc., it stays on the map until the end of the game. So in some extreme cases, if you want to, you can literally paint the map red. And speaking of blood and gore, there are so many ways to actually mess the enemies up. They explode into tiny pieces now. You can decapitate the Zeds, shoot their heads off, dismember them, you name it, you can probably do it. Also, game has changed how Z time works. Now, when the time slows down, everything goes into this red, black and white coloring, which looks really cool, especially when you add the slow-mo sound effect on top of it. Oh, and there's one more thing that is insanely important that adds to the climate: the music. Not only did the team step up their game, they also managed to get a license from bands like Demon Hunter or Fit for a King to add some of their music to the game. Now, I can't play the full-on lyric versions of the songs to not risk any copyright in the future, so I'll just show you some of the OST and maybe sprinkle in a couple of the songs that are looped with no lyrics. Roll it! Okay, so now we've touched a bit on what's cool and nice overall in-game, but let's talk about some gameplay stuff. Let's talk about how the game feels. First off, perks. There's been a change in how perks work. Instead of having the giant list of flat buffs whenever you leveled up, in Killing Floor 2, you have a perk system where every level or a couple levels you get a small buff to something. For instance, a Sharpshooter gets plus 1% headshot damage, plus 1% improved recoil reduction, and 2% weapon switch speed per level. And on top of that, every 5 levels you can select from 2 separate skills, which usually all add up to a very specific theme. Oh yeah, also, now you can level up to level 25 instead of level 6. For instance, at level 5, Sharpshooter chooses between a bonus to enemies when stationary, or increase how fast they shoot and how fast they move when they use perk weapons. Then there's a next set of skills on level 10 all the way up to level 25, where every perk gets a special bonus to what they can do in Z time. And here, as an example, you can look at a Berserker, who can either heal himself by 50% and immobilize enemies around him, or he can move and attack in Z time as if it was normal time. Also, you can switch out these skills on the fly whenever you are between waves, unlike the perk, which you can only change once per wave. This allows you for a lot of customization for your own playstyle. You want to be a sharpshooter that stays in the back of your group when you set up, to be stationary, aim down through your scope and one-shot big enemies with one big hit? Sure, take skills like Sniper, Stability, Tactical Reload for those fast reloads on single-shot weapons, and Deadeye for even more scoped in damage, and finish it off with Assassin for even more headshot damage, and go buy yourself an M99 AMR or something, and boom, you might not be able to do a lot against loads of Zeds, but you will fill your spot in a group by essentially one-shotting any big Zed on any difficulty and doing a load of damage to bosses. Or maybe you want to be more mobile, don't really care for big chunky weapons, but want to be able to both clear smaller Zeds and not feel useless against the big ones. Pick up Marksman, either Stability or Ballistic Shock, both work. Get yourself Rack 'em Up to stack even more headshot percentage damage, always prepared to not run out of ammo and grenades, and finish it off with Ranger to stun any Z that tries coming near you. And get yourself an M14 EBR and FNFAL. And now you're mobile and more versatile, but you need to sacrifice more shots on bigger Zeds. And you can do this with pretty much all the perks. Also, there's been a couple of new perks added to increase the number of playstyles you can do. You have Gunslinger, which is essentially a very mobile version of Sharpshooter. It also has Rack 'em Up and uses some of the same guns, mainly lever action rifles and revolvers, but can also akimbo any pistol available, so you could be running around with 2 Desert Eagles and let's say 2 1911s, because why not? You also have SWAT, which is a tanky one-man army using SMGs with loads of ammo to crowd control smaller Zeds, but he struggles against the biggest Zeds and the bosses. And the last perk added to KF2 is Survivalist, which is also a perk I would recommend to any new player. It used to be bad, but after several buffs, this perk is essentially your make your class perk, where you select between various bonuses for different categories of guns, and you get general bonuses for all guns, which is nice because it allows you to play with different combinations of weapons within a single perk and see what you like and what you don't like without dipping too much into a very specific niche. Now, onto the guns. You can clearly see that the game has moved on more towards high-tech stuff the further the game went on. The game started off somewhat tame with mostly real-life weapons, like the M14 EBR or Scar H, but with the game's continued lifespan, the devs started adding more and more weapons that are just either some futuristic weapons or things called HRGs, which are alternative high-tech versions of guns for one class made for a different one. For instance, you have the standard issued M16 M203, which is just an M16 with a grenade launcher that the Demolitionist and Commando could both use. But later on, the devs added the HRG Incendiary Rifle, that is essentially an M16 that shoots incendiary bullets, and the old fire launches an incendiary grenade instead of an HE one, and that's a weapon that specifically is for a firebug. Now, normally I would not mind that, but as the game went on, instead of adding more real-life weapons, we started getting stuff like Piranha pistols, which shoots tiny saw blades out of a tiny pistol, which kind of takes me out of the game, honestly. But back to the positive things about guns. You can really tell that when the game was being released, the devs really paid attention to detail with these guns. All the weapon animations from the original release and some of the first new added weapons were recorded in mocap in higher frames per second to make shooting and reloading these weapons in Z-time feel extremely smooth. On top of that, apparently Tripwire hired gun experts and ex-soldiers to perform reloads etc. for the weapons. That's why the actual weapon reloads feel so smooth and cool. And also why you can see that some perks that get increased reload speed skills actually change not only the animation speed, but the animation itself to more tactical reload style. Overall, the gunplay in this game feels really good. Most of the guns have a certain oomph to them, and they just feel good to play with. Additionally, hitboxes of Zeds compared to KF1 were majorly improved, meaning that there are rarely situations where it feels like a shot should hit the head, but it doesn't, even though the scope is on the Zed's head. And now the last thing that I would like to talk about when it comes to the positives and overall things, which are the bosses. KF2 launched with one boss only, with Hans Volter, who I would say for the most part is a decently difficult boss. He's throwing grenades around, shoots what looks like 2 MKB-42 rifles, which match with him being German, and when he enrages and runs up to you, he gives you the big suck and drains your life. Later on, there were more bosses added to a total amount of 5. There's an Abomination, which essentially looks like a big armored up bloat that craps out small fart cloud guys that run at you and explode. There isn't really much to this boss, he's just a big chunk of meat that is really fast. You also have King Fleshbound, which is just a bigger and stronger Fleshbound that also fires a laser from its chest. For some reason, the game really likes tossing this boss at me. Then there's the returning boss from KF1, the Patriarch, who is essentially exactly the same as he was in KF1. Then at the end there's a boss that I genuinely despise, the Matriarch. She was the last boss added along in an update where Edars were also added, I believe. And she's really annoying. She's got a destructible helmet part and a destructible arm laser thing, and if you don't destroy that arm, she's going to shoot you and obliterate your health from a really long distance. And when you finally get rid of the gun, she really speeds up and is ready to gap close really well, all while summoning lots of these Edars. I really hate this boss. Oh yeah, and there's one more thing. In KF2, the difficulty doesn't just mean that there's more enemies, tankier enemies and less money. Higher difficulties increase the chance of spawning the special elite variants of Zeds, the elite crawlers, the gore fiends, the rioters, but they also change how the Zeds behave. Starting on Suicidal and going to Hell on Earth, Zeds get new moves and movesets, meaning that there is actually a bit more complexity in dealing with said enemies. But that was about all that I wanted to convey and tell you regarding the good and the usual in this game. And so far, you might think, well, the quality of this game is clearly higher than KF1. All these changes are like good changes, right? Right? And yeah, they are, the game is good, but what I didn't tell you at the beginning was the fact that it's filled with microtransactions. I mean, look at the main menu. 3 of the tabs in this menu relate to microtransactions. 3 of them. And it's not even like these microtransactions are even somewhat reasonably or fair priced. They're all over the place. There's DLC weapons that you can buy to unlock in game where pricing makes no sense. Sometimes you can get a bundle of 2 weapons for 15 euros and sometimes you get a single weapon for 10 euros. On top of that, you have crates with weapon skins and character cosmetics, Counter-Strike style, where you have to buy keys to open them, but you can also scrap the chests themselves to get tokens to exchange for a random cosmetic, which would be at least somewhat fine if these tokens were not divided by tiers of cosmetics, and then further divided into character cosmetics and weapon cosmetics, meaning that in total you have 8 separate currencies in-game to exchange for random cosmetics. Oh yeah, and you can also buy emotes, but there's no preview for them outside of a random ass icon on the purchase screen. And you also have a Steam market for all these items. In all honesty, this feels insane and ridiculous. Especially the fact that you can actually buy power in form of the DLC weapons, because usually these weapons are stronger than the baseline guns and the HRG guns that come free with updates. The only saving grace to the weapon thing is the fact that if you are playing with friends or on a server with some other people, if one person has access to certain DLC weapons, meaning they bought them, then everyone on the server has access to them. So if in your party of 6 players there's one person that actually has these weapons because, for instance, they bought an armory pass or they just bought the weapons one by one, everyone in the party can buy these. But back to the things that feel bad and are annoying. There's one thing that can feel really bad, and that is optimization problems. I would say that my PC isn't the newest, and it's not the strongest by modern standards, since it is quite old comparatively, but it is way over the recommended hardware for Killing Floor 2. But still, I get random frame spikes, sometimes actual game freezes, and sometimes the game even crashes. I mean, probably somewhere on the footage you're seeing, there is some stuttering. I remember we had to troubleshoot why KF2 wasn't launching on my friend's laptop even though it was easily meeting the requirements for the game. And some people reported that the game used to hard crash at launch when Windows 11 was released. I mean, honestly, that is ridiculous that a 10-year-old game has so many optimization problems, and I would have thought that this shouldn't even be an issue. But yeah, these 2 problems are a fairly big stain on an otherwise really good title. Honestly, if you skip past the whole microtransaction thing and probably some optimization issues that someone in the group might have, if you ever see this game on a discount on the Steam store, and it does go on a discount fairly often, I would definitely give it a shot. The gameplay, especially when you play as a group, is really satisfying, faster than KF1, but it does not feel like everyone is just zooming around the map like it's Apex Legends or something. And it still feels like there is a lot of tactical depth when player count and Z count increases. Now that there are even more combinations of perks that player can use and each perk has a couple of different playstyles, I know I haven't harped on the microtransactions too much here and I spent more time actually talking about the good in the game, because while pushed, you can still almost entirely skip the whole microtransaction thing. It just really hits you when you see it in the main menu. Overall, I would definitely recommend this game to anyone who enjoys a good horde shooter, as well as fans of the previous game. And that is it from me for now. Again, if you liked the video, do hit a like, subscribe, drop a comment, and stay tuned for the next video, which hopefully will come out soon. Bye bye.